Ah, San Francisco, the city by the bay. It was originally called Yerba Buena, but don't you dare call it San Fran, or even worse, Frisco. Ooh, you'll get some looks from the locals. A city rich in history, the Golden Gate Bridge, the famous trolley cars, and my friend, I'm glad you're here, because we're gonna see it all.
Great thing about traveling is when you land at your destination, you've got the perfect trip mapped out in your head. But if you do it right, all that goes right out the window and it's just complete chaos. That's what I love. That's what's gonna happen here in the great city of San Francisco, and I'm so glad you're along for it. Welcome to San Francisco. Welcome to the Tattooed Traveler.
Over the years, a lot of people have said a lot of special things about San Francisco. Tony Bennett left his heart here. The English writer Rudyard Kipling said there's only one drawback to San Francisco. It's hard to leave. Well, it's always been one of my favorite towns too. There's a lot to show you, so we'll start right here at City Lights Bookstore.
One of the things that San Francisco is known for is progressive thinking and being ahead of the curve when it comes to liberal-mindedness. And back in 1953, two gentlemen opened this bookstore, City Lights, which is, without question, my favorite bookstore in the entire country. It's one of, if not the largest independent bookstores in the country. And they created it so that folks could come inside and find books that maybe they wouldn't find other places. Pieces of literature that maybe were censored in other parts of the country. All are welcome here at City Lights. I'm going to take you inside.
Those two men were Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who was a fabulous poet, and Dr. Peter Martin. Again, they opened City Lights in 1953, and from the moment they opened the front door, it was known as a place where a person could come, get lost in a book on just about any subject. The theme here at City Lights has pretty much always been alternative literature. And back in the 50s, 60s, buses full of tourists used to drive up and down Columbus in front of the store just to see all the beatniks hanging around reading. City Lights was also the nation's first all-paperback bookstore, and there are 3 levels. Here we are in the basement. Much of the literature here really pushes boundaries, be they political boundaries, cultural boundaries. City Lights is and always has been, probably always will be, all about intellectual curiosity being fulfilled. And they do an excellent job of not only keeping the history alive, but keeping the original mission of Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Dr. Peter Martin alive. We'll head upstairs now. This section is where you will find a lot of the beat authors, Ginsberg, Kerouac, they're all up here. These signs give you a pretty good idea of the vibe here at City Lights. There's Ginsberg and Dylan, really cool. Special place, City Lights Bookstore right on Columbus. And next door, speaking of Dylan and Ginsberg and history, is the Vesuvio Cafe. It's literally 10 steps away from City Lights, just across Jack Kerouac Alley. And this was his spot here in San Francisco, man. And it hasn't changed much. The beatniks used to come here to listen to poetry, listen to music. And again, there were no boundaries. They talked and sang and wrote about war and peace and love and oppression and change. It all happened inside these walls. Speaking of walls, there's the exterior of Jack Kerouac Alley. You can see some of the art. And here's the men's room, kind of wild. Odd place to shoot video, I know, but I just want you to really get a feel for the Vesuvio Cafe. Little history on the place. It opened in 1948. The original owner was a French expatriate, named the place after Mount Vesuvius in Italy. And it wasn't too long before the writers, like Jack Kerouac, started hanging out here and discussing their work while throwing a few drinks back. He even has a house cocktail named after him. with a little tequila, a lot of rum. So I thought I would order a Jack Kerouac and toast to the history of the Vesuvio Cafe. Now, something that's very special about this North Beach neighborhood, which is where City Lights and Vesuvio Cafe are located in San Francisco, is that this area backs right up to the oldest Chinatown in North America. There's the Zodiac Wall. You can literally see the change. This is another historic landmark, by the way. This is the Dragon Gate. I'm going to cross the street here and get you a little closer to those dragon monuments so you can see the architecture and design. I mentioned a moment ago that this is the oldest Chinatown in North America, and it is also the largest Chinatown outside of Asia. Chinatown covers a good chunk of land, about 24 city blocks to be exact, and it's filled with markets and souvenir shops, restaurants, and plenty of colorful characters. So guys, hang on to your ladies.
If I was 60 years younger, you are in deep shit trouble, girl.
She loves older guys. She loves it.
Come in and drink some tea. You think you can handle that young lady tonight? You drink enough tea, young like me. How old do you think I am, kid?
23.
You try to kiss me up? If I were 50 years younger, that young lady's in trouble.
That's my husband.
Hey, I'm not the jealous type. Don't worry about it.
You believe he's 93? The first Chinese immigrants came to San Francisco in 1848, 2 men and 1 woman. And throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, Chinatown was the epicenter of San Francisco nightlife. This is where the hot spots were. And the hottest of the hot was the famous Lipo Lounge. It was founded in the early 1930s by a Chinese immigrant named Tom Yi. And originally, it was a restaurant and a little grocery store. But after Prohibition was lifted in 1933, it became what you see today. Not just home of one of the most expensive t-shirts you'll ever buy, but also home of the Chinese Mai Tai. And I don't know, the red lanterns, the gold dragons, seems like the perfect environment to enjoy a $12 Mai Tai. Woo! And believe me, it's worth every sip. I mean, cent. And on top of that, you get to meet Connie.
The history about this bar, Mai Tai. I say, even you had the history, but you had the good personnel, the bartender, like me, bring the customer coming.
What can you tell me about the history of this bar?
1937, first bar in Chinatown, and then we had the famous Mai Tai.
But you know what? You don't fill them up very high.
I could always just order another one, I guess. Part of the allure of Chinatown is its authenticity, its nostalgic charm, and of course, the food. It's never wise to drink a Chinese Mai Tai on an empty stomach, so Connie sent me right next door to a place called Woi Loi Goi. And man, am I glad she did. Like you, I noticed right off the bat that there's not a whole lot going on in this restaurant. 5 or 6 people just watching a movie. But the food, oh friend, the food. I'll show you what we ate, and keep in mind we got all this for under 50 bucks. Mongolian beef, egg rolls, soup. That soup, oh, I heard angels sing. And their house specialty, chicken fried rice. Again, under 50 bucks for everything. And we polished it off, baby. And how did we finish the meal? Now here's a little known fact. Did you know that the fortune cookie was born right here in San Francisco in 1914? It didn't originate in China. It originated right here. And I'm opening this in front of you. Oh. Courtesy is one habit that never goes out of style. Listen, let me pause just for a second here and remind you that the Tattooed Traveler is now not only on YouTube, but we're also on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Smart TV all around the world, over 10 different countries. So check us out wherever you go. And speaking of wherever you go, you didn't think that I would bring you to San Francisco and not bring you to the epicenter of counterculture, did you? I mean, this is where you want to go if you really want to experience that true, authentic, genuine hippie vibe. This, my friend, is Haight-Ashbury. Yeah, Haight-Ashbury is where the hippie movement of the 1960s really began. And as you can see here, it still has that bohemian sense today. The neighborhood was home to the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, the Steve Miller Band. I'm going to show you a couple of really cool homes in just a moment. But let's talk about the Summer of Love, 1967. Prior to 67, this was home to a small community of hip residents who were really into art, music, literature, theater. That's the term hippie. Charles Manson even lived here for a little bit during that time. But the Summer of Love began in 1967 when somewhere between 75,000 and 100,000 teenagers from all across the country flooded these 25 blocks to participate in a social experiment that was based on love and peace and freedom. And the Haight-Ashbury district really became the home base for that. Here's a shot of Janis Joplin standing in the very store that we're in right now. And this ceiling was actually part of a set that went on tour with the Grateful Dead. But this is where the psychedelic art and music all stemmed from. Tie-dye too, of course, gotta have the tie-dye. The Summer of Love was short-lived, however, and many attribute that to the increased use of drugs like LSD and marijuana and the homelessness and crime that resulted from that. So many of the original hippies just moved on, but there are still plenty of unique shops and eateries and street musicians providing that lively atmosphere.
So while we're talking about Haight-Ashbury, let's go back to 1967, the Summer of Love. 75,000 teenagers from all across the country came here to this area, and they just expressed themselves. It was a beautiful, beautiful time. At least I can imagine it as being a beautiful, beautiful time. But one of the things that still lives on today, more prominently than the fight against the norm, the counterculture, right? The fight against depression, was the music. Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and the Grateful Dead. This was their home right here, 710 Ashbury Street. Think about the music that came from right inside those walls, man. Awesome.
And how's this for a block party? Just across the street at 635 Ashbury Street, this apartment building lived Janis Joplin. Janis Joplin, right across the street from the Grateful Dead. And I'll even do you one better here. If we go back down to the corner, right here on Haight, in this building lived Jimi Hendrix. Jimmy, Janis, and the Dead, all within, a 5-minute walk from one another? Today, Haight-Ashbury is still a popular tourist destination, and the area has been revitalized in recent years with a lot of new businesses. In addition to all the wonderful neighborhoods and historic sites, something that makes San Francisco a wonderful place to visit is the ease with which you can get around. Of course, you can take an Uber or a Lyft. You won't wait more than a minute or two to be picked up. But I would really encourage you to do the San Francisco thing and ride one of the classic cable cars. I mean, this city is known for its hilly terrain, and for over a century, cable cars have been an iconic part of San Francisco's landscape. They were invented here in the late 1800s by Andrew Halliday, a Scottish immigrant who witnessed a horrific accident involving a horse-drawn streetcar sliding backwards down a steep hill. And this inspired him to develop a safer mode of transportation for all the hilly streets here in the city. He invented a system that used a cable running beneath the street to pull the car along rather than relying on the power of horses. And so the first cable car line opened here in San Francisco in 1873. Obviously, the rise of automobiles and buses in the mid-1900s led to a decline in the popularity of cable cars, but you better believe they're still here. It'll cost you $8 for a one-way trip. Kids under 5 are free. It was fun watching the gripman and the conductor work together to apply the brakes and operate the car, and then when the trolley reaches the top of the hill, they switch positions and it goes back down the other direction. When you're ready to hop off, you just ring a little bell and the trolley comes to a stop. I was working up an appetite, so my stop was Sears Fine Food, an institution here in San Francisco since 1938. It started off as a little lunch counter in the financial district, but now Sears is known for quite a few things, not the least of which are their world-famous 18 Swedish pancakes. We'll get to those. Also known for its old-fashioned decor, its exquisite service, some of the best you'll have anywhere, and for Sidney. Now, Sidney passed away a few years ago, but prior to his death, he was the maitre d' here at Sears Fine Food. There he is on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. A lot of publicity. And Sidney greeted customers here at Sears until he was 108 years old. Oh, the stories I bet he could tell. A lot of famous faces have come in here. President Obama. Now those pancakes, those 18 Swedish pancakes, the recipe is trademarked. But here they are. Had to try them with some hot butter and maple syrup. And believe me, they were worth the hype. All right, our next stop is Lombard Street. And by the way, as we take a right onto Lombard here, thank you again for joining me on this visit to San Francisco. I hope you're enjoying the video. I hope you'll like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now, they call Lombard the crookedest street in the world, but it isn't. It's not even the most crooked street here in San Francisco. But every year, millions of visitors walk down its 8 sharp hairpin turns. I probably should have been among them to burn off the calories from the pancakes, but what are you going to do, right? It's definitely one of the city's most scenic streets with beautiful homes and landscaping. And the reason it's so crooked with the 8 hairpin turns that you see here is to increase the safety, because the natural grade of this hill was just far too steep, far too dangerous. A couple of more things I want to show you here before we wrap up this episode of The Tattooed Traveler. Here's Fisherman's Wharf, a lot of restaurants and shops here. And just down the street a bit is Pier 39. And you can probably tell by that landscaping what Pier 39 is most known for: the famous sea lions of San Francisco. It's funny because they haven't been here long. They just mysteriously showed up in January of 1990, and at first, no one could really figure out why. But then folks figured it out. It was because of the abundance of herring that are around the docks here. Now the sea lions pretty much call Pier 39 home, and the tourists love it. Oh, look at that shot of the Golden Gate Bridge. And the fog. Did you know that San Francisco has a name for its fog? The locals call the fog Carl. Carl with a K, and Carl the Fog even has his own Instagram page. What a life these guys have. Well, I suppose we could not visit the Golden Gate City without getting up close and personal with the Golden Gate Bridge, right? I explored a few different options for really good vantage points of the bridge and decided upon Fort Point, primarily because I love this angle. And secondly, because they have an excellent welcome center and gift shop. I'm a bit of a souvenir nerd. Every year, more than 10 million visitors visit the Golden Gate Bridge. Like me, they want to get as close as they can to those 746-foot towers and those sweeping main cables. And the closer I got, the more I realized the Golden Gate Bridge is really more orange than red. Wow, look at some of these numbers. You may want to pause the video so you can take these in. 80,000 miles of wire used in the construction of this bridge. It's 1.7 miles from end to end, and you can walk it. It's about a 35-minute walk each way. Probably a pretty pleasant walk, too, with San Francisco weather. Here are some tools that were used in the construction. Yeah, if you have an interest in architecture, this is really something to take in. And it's all on display here in the gift shop, so you can check it all out and grab a shirt on your way home.
Well, I hope you enjoyed your time here in San Francisco. I want to thank you for sharing it with me. And this is what travel is all about. You know, hitting the road, seeing as much as you can see, experiencing as much as you can experience, tasting as much as you can possibly taste. And I've just had a blast. So thank you again. Now, if you're new to the family, be sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel because we have a lot of great destinations coming your way. And we've got some new friends watching us all over the world. Ireland, hello. Scotland, hello. The UK, Spain, Canada, Mexico. I love that you're here. Take this opportunity to grab your new Tattoo Traveler t-shirt or hoodie. I'll put the link down in the description of the video. And until we meet again a little further down the road, I'm Todd Newton. Travel safely.